Michael Myers. In Halloween Ends, Michael Myers made his final on-screen kill, at least as of the time of this video. The story begins with Corey Cunningham as a young man marked by tragedy. While babysitting a child, an accident resulted in the death of a boy named Jeremy, and Corey was treated like a monster by the town. Years later, he gets close to Allison, Laurie Strode's granddaughter, but his life begins to fall apart. Little by little, Corey becomes obsessed with Michael Myers and starts seeing the killer as some kind of mentor. When he finally puts on Michael's mask, he breaks into Laurie's house determined to kill her, but Laurie strikes first, shoots Corey, and sends him tumbling down the stairs. And here's the strangest part. Corey grabs a knife and puts it into his own neck. It looks like suicide, but there's a reason. He wants Allison to believe that Laurie killed him, but the plan doesn't work out as expected. Michael Myers shows up at the house looking specifically for his mask, which Corey had stolen. When he finds the young man still alive, Michael shows absolutely no reaction. He simply grabs him and snaps his neck. Leatherface. In the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Melody and her sister Lila arrive in Harlow trying to escape the chaos caused by Leatherface. After facing the killer, the two sisters finally manage to take him down in an abandoned building. Leatherface falls into a flooded pit and sinks, but of course it's not over. The sisters get into a car and start leaving town, but the vehicle is on autopilot, and just when Melody least expects it, Leatherface appears at the window. He smashes the glass, grabs the young woman, and drags her out of the moving car. Leatherface starts up his chainsaw and decapitates the young woman right there, and Lila sees everything. She screams through the open sunroof of the car, while the autopilot keeps driving her away. And the scene even contains a great reference to the original movie. In that classic, Sally Hardesty manages to escape Leatherface in a pickup truck, while the killer is left behind in the road, spinning his chainsaw. Here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre completely reverses the situation. The vehicle is also driving away, but Leatherface wins. Ghostface. Even though every movie has a different Ghostface, we can't leave Scream off our list. And in the 7th movie in the franchise, Ben Brown is Tatum Evans' boyfriend, Sidney Prescott's daughter. And since we're talking about Scream, dating the final girl's daughter never seems like a very safe activity. During the massacre, Tatum starts to become suspicious of Ben. She finds a laptop in his car with technology capable of creating deep fake videos of Stu Maker, the killer from the first movie. Since Ghostface is using fake images of past killers to torment Sidney, the suspicion seems to make sense. Tatum goes after Ben and knocks him unconscious. But she soon realizes she made a mistake. The real Ghostface appears and Tatum runs through the streets. Ben regains consciousness and goes after her, trying to help his girlfriend. That's when he finds the killer. Ghostface surprises Ben and stabs him several times. Tatum witnesses the attack and manages to escape, while Ben is left behind and doesn't survive. That's how we discover that Ben really was innocent. The person responsible for the attack is Marco Davis, an employee at a psychiatric facility and a technology expert who is behind the deepfakes used by Ghostface. And he wasn't acting alone. He was the right-hand man of Jessica Bowden, Sidney's friendly neighbor who was the real mastermind behind the plan. Jigsaw. In Saw 3, John Kramer is close to death, but there's still time for one final macabre game. Lynn Denlin, a surgeon, is put in one of the most tense situations in the movie when she is kidnapped by Amanda Young and taken to Jigsaw's hideout. John Kramer is seriously ill and needs emergency surgery to stay alive, and Lynn, being an experienced doctor, is forced to perform the procedure. But the surgery isn't the only test. Before it begins, Amanda puts a collar equipped with several shotgun shells around Lynn's neck. The device is connected to John's heart monitor. As long as his heart keeps beating, Lynn stays alive. If John dies, the collar fires, and she dies. Lynn manages to perform the surgery and stabilize Jigsaw, but the situation quickly gets out of control. Amanda, who is becoming increasingly paranoid and jealous, starts believing that Lynn and John have a relationship beyond the professional one. On top of that, she no longer trusts Jigsaw's own philosophy. Consumed by anger, Amanda grabs a gun and shoots Lynn in the abdomen. Gravely wounded, she remains trapped by the collar while John tries to control the situation. That's when Jeff Denlin, Lynn's husband, enters the room. After going through Jigsaw's own game, he finds his wife shot and sees John as the person responsible for all of her suffering. Consumed by rage, Jeff grabs a circular saw and cuts Jigsaw's throat. The heart monitor immediately flatlines, and at that exact moment, Lynn's collar is activated. The shells fire to her head, killing her instantly. The cruel part is that Lynn managed to save John, but ended up dying precisely when Jeff decided to take his life. Freddy Krueger. One character who hasn't appeared in theaters for quite some time is Freddy Krueger. It seems like he may have retired for good. To see his final kill before the 2010 reboot, we have to go all the way back to 2003. In Freddy vs. Jason, Mark Davis is one of the young people trying to figure out why nightmares involving Freddy Krueger are coming back. To keep Freddy from being remembered, the residents of Springwood spent years using a drug called Hypnosil, which prevents people from dreaming, but its effects are starting to wear off. Mark falls asleep at home and goes straight into a nightmare. There, he sees an image of his brother Bobby, who has already died. died, lying inside a bathtub filled with blood. But the figure starts speaking with Freddy's voice. At that exact moment, Lori and Will arrive at Mark's house, and they find the scene already underway. The killer runs his claws across the young man's face, and the injuries immediately appear in the real world. Mark doesn't survive, but Freddy still leaves a message. Freddy's back. But if we're talking about the last death that actually happened on screen, we have to talk about the 2010 remake. There, the final victim is Gwen Holbrook, Nancy's mother. In the final seconds of the movie, when everyone thinks it's finally over, mother and daughter are talking at home. Then Freddy appears in the mirror's reflection, drives his claws through the woman's head, and drags her body into the mirror while Nancy screams. It's literally the final shot of the movie, and it was the last time Freddy killed someone in theaters. Jason Voorhees. Before we get to the real final one, there's something that needs to be made clear. In 2009, the franchise was reset. The reboot threw out the entire continuity and started the story from scratch. In other words, there's a Jason before and a Jason after. And the final victim of the original Jason happened in the most unlikely place possible: space. In Jason X, he is found frozen and awakened in the year 2455 aboard a spaceship, and the last person he kills in the franchise is Janessa Zachary. Jason punches a hole through the ship's hull, and the decompression tears a metal grate loose and leaves it covering the opening. Janessa can't hold on. She gets sucked against the grate and passes completely through its holes before disappearing into the emptiness of space. After that, he still appeared in the crossover with Freddy. But then came the reboot. In the 2009 movie, Jenna is one of the young people camping near Crystal Lake and ends up helping Clay Miller, who has arrived in the area looking for his sister Whitney, who was kidnapped by Jason Voorhees. After Clay and Jenna find Whitney in Jason's underground hideout, the three of them try to escape through the tunnels. Clay and Whitney reach the exit first, but Jenna is left behind. When she finally reaches the surface, she reaches her hand out to Clay, expecting him to pull her up. But Jason appears behind her and kills her, pulling her body back into the darkness. After that, Jason attacks the survivors on a dock by the lake, and this cut-to-black scene is the last thing we have of the character on screen. But that's about to change. In October 2026, Crystal Lake, the Peacock and A24 series premieres and goes back to the very beginning, and Jason will appear in both forms, as a child in his mother's memories and as an adult with a new look. So we'll probably have to update this list. Pennywise. Although the recent series Welcome to Derry features countless deaths, we can't forget that it takes place before the events of the movies. Officially, the last death we see happens in It Chapter 2. After returning to Derry with the Losers Club, Eddie Kasprak ends up sacrificing his own life to save Richie, one of the members of the group. During the battle in the caves, Pennywise takes the form of a huge spider-like creature and uses the deadlights to paralyze Richie. Eddie realizes that he needs to act and remembers one of the main rules of their confrontation. Pennywise's power also depends on what his victims believe. He then grabs an iron spear and, believing it's a weapon capable of killing the monster, throws it directly at Pennywise. The attack hits the creature and frees Richie. For a few seconds, it looks like Eddie actually managed to defeat Pennywise, but the creature quickly recovers and attacks. One of its enormous claws pierces Eddie through the back, leaving him mortally wounded. Pennywise then lifts him into the air and violently throws him against the ground. Even knowing he's dying, Eddie is still able to exchange a few words with his friends. He jokes with Richie and celebrates managing to lay out the clown before reinforcing the idea that they need to leave their fear behind. Richie is completely devastated, making the moment even more painful. After the Losers Club finally defeats Pennywise, the cave begins to collapse. They try to take Eddie's body with them, but are ultimately forced to leave him behind in the rubble, ending the character's story with a heroic sacrifice. The death. In Final Destination Bloodlines, Stefani and Charlie Reyes have two of the movie's most brutal deaths, while also starring in a direct homage to the famous log truck sequence from Final Destination 2. It all begins when the siblings believe they've finally cheated death. During an accident involving the family's trailer, Stefani almost drowns while trapped by her seatbelt. But Charlie manages to pull her out of the water and perform CPR. Since she apparently died and came back to life, the two believe they managed to escape their fate. But a week later, they discover that wasn't really the case. While getting ready for Charlie's graduation, Stefani talks to a doctor and discovers that her heart never actually stopped. She was only unconscious. In other words, technically, she never died and came back to life, which means death is still after both of them. Right after the revelation, the signs begin to appear. A coin falls onto the tracks and ends up causing a freight train to derail and crash into the street, forcing Stefani and Charlie to desperately run for their lives. When the train finally stops, we get the impression that the siblings managed to survive. But death isn't finished yet. One of the freight cars comes speeding by, causing the logs to break loose and slam into Stefani and Charlie. The two are instantly, bringing the siblings' story to a brutal end. The Grabber. In The Black Phone, the Grabber is a child abductor and killer who lures his victims into his house, locks the boys in a basement, and then kills them. One of them is Robin Arellano, Finney Blake's schoolmate and the protagonist's friend. Robin is known for being brave and protecting Finney from bullies. He ends up becoming the fifth and final victim, kidnapped by the grabber. After being killed in the basement, Robin returns as a spirit through the black phone and talks to Finney. Instead of simply helping him escape, he teaches the boy to stop running and start fighting. Robin also shows him how to turn the phone itself into a weapon. These instructions are crucial for the final confrontation. Finney uses everything he learned from the previous victims, including Robin, to defeat the grabber and finally kill him.
So Finn is gonna do it for me. Finn's arm is mint!
Things get even more interesting in the black phone too. Even after returning as a vengeful spirit and trying to kill Finney, Gwen, and other people, the grabber doesn't manage to claim any new fatal victims. In the end, Finney is the one who defeats him again. After the bodies of the first victims are found beneath the ice, the grabber loses his strength and takes an axe to the head. The spirits of the boys he killed pull his body down into the bottom of the frozen lake. Art, the clown. In Terrifier 3, Sienna Shaw finally tries to rebuild her life after everything she went through with Art the Clown. She's living with her Aunt Jess, her Uncle Greg, and her cousin Gabby, but Art and Victoria Hayes, now possessed by the pale little girl, find their way to the family. Sienna wakes up after being knocked unconscious and realizes she's tied to a chair next to Jess. The two are completely helpless, while Art and Victoria turn the house into a living nightmare. To make things worse, Victoria shows a disfigured head being eaten by rats and claims that it belongs to Gabby. The idea is simple: destroy Jess and Sienna emotionally before even attacking them. Then Art goes after Jess. He forces a tube down the woman's throat and, with Victoria's help, uses it to put rats inside her. After that comes the final blow and Jess doesn't survive. And the worst was still to come. Right afterward, Art appears carrying Gabby, revealing that she was still alive. The head shown earlier wasn't hers, but Jonathan's, Sienna's brother. In other words, all that torture was planned specifically to target the protagonist's greatest fears. This is the latest death so far, but a sequel has already been confirmed. So this is going to change. Chucky. Before we get to Timmy Nash's death, which is Chucky's final victim in the series, there's one particularly important death in his history. Michelle Cross, the former mayor of Hackensack, and the mother of Lexi and Caroline. Lexi is one of the main teenagers who faces Chucky throughout the series, while Caroline, her younger sister, becomes one of the children involved in the killer's plans. Tiffany Valentine is Charles Lee Ray's former partner, the woman who also becomes a doll and continues helping Chucky with his plans. And it's Tiffany who sets off the chain of events that ends with Michelle's death. In the season 2 finale of Chucky on Christmas Eve, Tiffany breaks into the Cross family home disguised as Jennifer Tilly. Her goal is to retrieve the wedding bell doll, which Caroline has. In the middle of the break-in, Chucky appears holding a chainsaw. Michelle barely has time to react before the doll turns it on and brutally cuts her. And the worst part is that Lexi witnesses everything. Right in front of her own daughter, Michelle is murdered by the doll. But Chucky doesn't get away with it. Consumed by anger and desperation, Lexi grabs the same chainsaw and goes after him. She manages to destroy the doll, his head into several pieces. From that point on, he continues his killing spree, but becomes dependent on other bodies and forms to keep killing. That brings us to season 3 and the death of Timmy Nash, a medium who becomes involved in the events at the White House. This time, Chucky is hiding inside Jake Wheeler's body, one of the young people who spent much of the series trying to stop his killings. During the chaos at the White House, Chucky gets into an elevator with Timmy and reveals his true intentions. He then brutally beats the medium and leaves him incapacitated. Shortly afterward, the elevator is engulfed in flames, and Timmy ends up dying burnt to death. Now, if that was the last time each of these guys killed someone, have you ever stopped to think about the first time? Or maybe the most brutal one? We've already made videos about that, so click on the screen and check them out. See you there.